During a family dinner, my sister barged into my kids' room where they were sleeping and shouted, "Get out now, I need this room immediately." When my confused kids had no idea what was going on, she grabbed them forcefully and threw them outside into the hallway. My mother came running and said, "Leave her alone, she's having a bad day and needs to take her anger out somehow." Dad added, "If you go near her right now, you might get some violence too." I stayed quiet, picked up my crying and traumatized kids, and made one phone call that left their day even more miserable. I'm Camden Mitchell, a 32-year-old mother of two beautiful children, Lainey, 7, and Beckett, 5. What I'm about to tell you happened 6 months ago, but the effects are still rippling through my family like aftershocks from an earthquake. This is the story of how one phone call changed everything and gave my toxic family exactly what they deserved. Let me start by painting you a picture of my family dynamics. My parents, Wendell and June, have always had a golden child, and it wasn't me. That honor belonged to my younger sister, Hollis, who at 28 still lived at home, unemployed, and seemingly incapable of taking responsibility for anything in her life. Meanwhile, I had worked my way through college, built a successful career in marketing, bought my own house, and was raising two incredible kids as a single mom after my ex-husband David and I divorced 2 years ago. The favoritism wasn't subtle. When Hollis crashed her third car in 2 years, Dad bought her a brand new Honda Civic. When I needed help with childcare during a particularly demanding work project, Mom told me I should have thought about that before having kids. When Hollis dropped out of her 4th attempt at community college, they consoled her with a vacation to Hawaii. When I graduated with my MBA while working full-time and raising toddlers, they showed up 20 minutes late to the ceremony because Hollis had a crisis involving her on-again, off-again boyfriend Marcus. But I persevered. I thought that maybe, just maybe, if I proved myself enough, worked hard enough, achieved enough, they would finally see me as worthy of their love and respect. I was wrong, but it took that horrific Sunday evening for me to finally understand just how wrong I was. The incident happened during what was supposed to be a nice family dinner at my parents' house. These monthly gatherings had become somewhat of a tradition, though I often questioned why I continued to subject myself and my children to them. Maybe it was hope, maybe it was stubbornness, or maybe it was just the naive belief that families should stick together no matter what. Lainey and Beckett had been playing quietly in the guest bedroom upstairs after dinner. They were tired from a long day at the park, and I had tucked them in for a little nap around 7 p.m., knowing we wouldn't be leaving until after 8. The guest room had been their room during these visits for as long as they could remember. Mom had even bought special Disney sheets for the bed and kept some of their toys in the closet. I was downstairs in the kitchen, helping Mom with the dishes while Dad and Hollis argued about her latest drama. Apparently, Marcus had broken up with her again, this time via text message, and she was spiraling. This was nothing new. Hollis's relationships were like seasonal weather patterns, predictable in their chaos. "He doesn't deserve you anyway, sweetheart," Mom was saying, abandoning the dishes to rub Hollis's shoulders. "You're too good for him." Dad nodded in agreement. "That boy has no class. You need someone who appreciates what they have." I bit my tongue, as I always did. Marcus was actually a decent guy who worked 2 jobs and was studying to become an electrician. His crime was apparently getting tired of Hollis's constant neediness and refusal to contribute anything to their relationship except drama. That's when we heard the screaming. It started as a loud bang, like a door being thrown open, followed immediately by Hollis's voice, shrill and aggressive, "Get out now. I need this room immediately." My blood turned to ice. I dropped the dish I was holding, and it shattered on the kitchen floor. The sound of my children's confused, frightened voices mixed with Hollis's continued yelling made my maternal instincts kick into overdrive. I ran toward the stairs, but Mom grabbed my arm. "Wait, Camden, let me. Those are my children," I snapped, shaking her off and taking the stairs 2 at a time. What I found at the top of the stairs will haunt me forever. Lainey was pressed against the hallway wall, clutching her stuffed elephant, tears streaming down her face. Beckett was on the floor where he had apparently been shoved, his little Superman pajamas twisted around his small body, looking up at the adults with pure terror in his eyes. And Hollis, my adult sister, was standing in the doorway of the guest room, her face twisted with rage, pointing at my children like they were criminals. I said, "Get out." She screamed again. "I need to be alone right now." "Hollis, what the hell are you doing?" I demanded, rushing to Beckett and scooping him up in my arms. He immediately buried his face in my neck, his little body shaking. "I'm having a breakdown, okay?" Hollis shot back, as if that explained everything. "Marcus dumped me, and I need space to process." They were too loud anyway. "They were sleeping," I said, my voice rising to match hers. "They're children, Hollis. You can't just grab them and throw them out of a room." Lainey crept over to me, still clutching her elephant. "Mommy, we weren't being loud," she whispered. "We were just lying down," and then Aunt Hollis opened the door really hard and started yelling. My heart shattered into a million pieces. My 7-year-old daughter was trying to defend herself against the irrational behavior of a grown woman. You grabbed them? I asked Hollis, my voice dangerously quiet. I didn't grab them, I just moved them along, Hollis said defensively. They needed to get out, and they weren't moving fast enough. That's when Mom appeared at the top of the stairs, breathing hard from the climb. But instead of being horrified by what had happened, instead of protecting her grandchildren, she immediately went to Hollis's defense. Camden, leave her alone, Mom said firmly. She's having a bad day and needs to take her anger out somehow. You know how sensitive she is. I stared at my mother in disbelief. Take her anger out on my children? She didn't hurt them, Mom continued, wrapping her arm around Hollis protectively. They're fine. Children are resilient. Dad appeared behind Mom, having finally made his way upstairs. I thought surely he would see reason, would be outraged that his grandchildren had been treated this way. Instead, he looked at me with warning in his eyes. If you go near her right now, you might get some violence too, he said calmly, as if he were discussing the weather. Hollis is in a fragile state. You need to give her space. The words hit me like a physical blow. My own father was threatening me with violence for trying to protect my children from my sister's tantrum. He was choosing her feelings over his grandchildren's safety and well-being. I looked around at my family, these people who were supposed to love and protect us, and I saw them clearly for the first time in my life. Mom was still rubbing Hollis's back, murmuring soothing words. Dad was blocking my path to the guest room, his arms crossed defensively. And Hollis was actually smirking, satisfied that once again, she had gotten her way and faced no consequences for her actions. I made a decision in that moment that would change everything. I stayed quiet. I didn't argue, didn't yell, didn't try to reason with them. Instead, I gathered my children, picked up their scattered belongings, and carried them downstairs. Lainey walked beside me, still sniffling, while Beckett clung to me like a koala. We're leaving, I announced quietly as I collected their shoes and jackets. Camden, don't be dramatic, Mom called from the top of the stairs. It's not that big of a deal. I didn't respond. I helped my children into their shoes, buckled them into their car seats, and drove home in silence while they asked me over and over again what they had done wrong. You didn't do anything wrong, babies, I told them, my hands gripping the steering wheel so tight my knuckles were white. Sometimes grown-ups make very bad choices, and this was one of those times. After I got Lainey and Beckett settled at home with some ice cream and their favorite movie, I had to deal with the immediate aftermath. Lainey was still shaking and had wet herself in the car from fear, something that hadn't happened in over 2 years. Beckett kept asking me if Aunt Hollis hated him, his little voice breaking with confusion. I cleaned Lainey up, got both kids into fresh pajamas, and spent an hour reassuring them that they hadn't done anything wrong. Once they finally fell asleep in my bed, still clinging to each other, I retreated to my home office and made a phone call that would change everything. You see, there was something my family didn't know about my job. While they knew I worked in marketing, they didn't know the specifics of my role or my connections. I was the senior marketing director for a large real estate development company, and part of my job involved maintaining relationships with local government officials, city planners, and housing authorities. More importantly, I had spent the last year working closely with the county's housing compliance department on a major commercial project. During that time, I had become friendly with Margaret Chen, the director of housing inspections, and her team. I had also spent enough time at my parents' house over the years to notice things that my family had become blind to. The way the upstairs bathroom floor sagged slightly near the toilet. The electrical outlet in the kitchen that sparked sometimes when you unplugged appliances. The basement stairs that Dad had been meaning to fix for 3 years. The fact that they had converted the garage into Hollis's bedroom without permits, adding plumbing and electrical work that was definitely not up to code. My parents owned their house, a 1960s split level that had been in the family for decades. It was their pride and joy, their main asset, and their retirement plan. They had been talking for months about taking out a home equity loan to fund Hollis's latest business idea, some kind of online boutique selling curated vintage clothing that would probably fail like all her other ventures. They had even gotten pre-approved for the loan, pending a final property appraisal. I called Margaret at home. We had exchanged personal numbers during the commercial project, and I knew she wouldn't mind hearing from me. Camden, hi. How are you? Margaret's warm voice came through the phone. I'm okay, Margaret, but I need to ask you about something. It's personal, and I'm probably going to sound like a terrible daughter. What's going on? I took a deep breath. I have some concerns about the safety and code compliance of my parents' house. My children spend time there regularly, and after what happened today, I'm worried about their safety in more ways than one. I explained everything to Margaret. The unpermitted garage conversion, the electrical issues, the structural problems I had observed, the fact that my parents were planning to take out a loan against a house that might not meet current safety standards. Camden, Margaret said carefully, are you asking me to inspect your parents' house? I'm asking you to do your job, I replied. If there are safety violations that could put people at risk, shouldn't those be addressed? And if someone is planning to take out a loan against a property that has unpermitted additions, shouldn't the bank know about that? Margaret was quiet for a moment. You know that if we find significant violations, they'll be required to fix them immediately or face penalties, right? And if there's unpermitted construction, they might have to tear it out entirely. I understand. And you know that this could impact their ability to get that loan. I understand that too. There was another pause. I'll have someone out there Tuesday morning. We'll need to do a full inspection, inside and out. Thank you, Margaret. Camden, are you sure about this? I thought about Lainey's terrified face, about Beckett shaking in my arms, about my parents choosing Hollis's tantrum over their grandchildren's well-being. I've never been more sure of anything in my life. Tuesday morning came, and I was at work when my phone started buzzing. First it was Mom, then Dad, then Hollis, all calling back to back. I let them go to voicemail. The first message was from Mom, her voice tight with panic. Camden, there are inspectors at our house. They say someone reported safety violations. They're going through everything with a fine-tooth comb. Call me back immediately. The second was from Dad, angrier. Camden, these inspectors are asking about the garage conversion and some electrical issues. Did you know anything about this? Call us back. The third was from Hollis, and she was furious. I know this was you, Camden. These people are in my room, going through my stuff, and they're saying I might have to move out. How could you do this to your own family? I didn't call them back. Instead, I waited for Margaret to call me with the results. The call came that afternoon. Margaret's voice was serious. Camden, we found significant code violations at your parents' house. The garage conversion was done completely without permits, and the electrical and plumbing work is dangerous. There's also a structural issue with the upstairs bathroom that needs immediate attention. What does that mean for them? They have 30 days to either bring everything up to code or return the spaces to their original condition. The garage conversion will have to be completely redone with proper permits, or they'll need to remove all the plumbing and electrical and turn it back into a garage. The bathroom floor needs to be completely rebuilt. And they can't take out any loans against the property until all violations are resolved and re-inspected. I felt a mix of satisfaction and guilt. How much is this going to cost them? Conservatively? $40,000 to $60,000. Maybe more if they run into complications. That evening, the calls started again. This time, I answered. How could you do this to us? Mom's voice was shrill with panic. These are your parents, Camden. You're family. You're right, I said calmly. I am family. And so are Lainey and Beckett. But apparently, that only matters when it's convenient for you. This is about Sunday night, isn't it? Dad's voice came through the speaker. You're punishing us because Hollis was upset. Hollis physically grabbed my children and threw them out of a room while they were sleeping, I said. And when I tried to protect them, you threatened me with violence. You chose her feelings over their safety. We didn't threaten you, Mom protested. We just said, Dad told me I might get some violence if I went near Hollis, I interrupted. How is that not a threat? There was silence on the other end. Those violations are real safety issues, I continued. If you're going to have children in that house, it should be safe. If Hollis is going to live in that garage, it should be legal. If you're going to borrow money against the house, the bank should know what they're actually lending against. You've destroyed us, Hollis's voice came through, shaky with tears. I have to move out. I have nowhere to go. And Mom and Dad can't afford to fix all this. Maybe you should call Marcus, I suggested. Oh wait, he broke up with you because you're a 28-year-old woman who throws tantrums and grabs children. Camden, Mom gasped. No, I said firmly. I'm done pretending that Hollis's behavior is acceptable. I'm done watching you enable her while my children suffer. I'm done being the family scapegoat while the golden child gets away with literal assault. Assault? Dad scoffed. Now you're being ridiculous. She put her hands on my children without permission and forcibly removed them from a room. In any other context, you'd call that assault. But because it's Hollis, it's just her having a bad day. The conversation devolved from there, with lots of shouting and accusations and threats to cut me out of the family entirely. I listened to it all with a strange sense of peace. You know what? I said when they finally paused for breath. Maybe being cut out of this family would be the best thing that ever happened to me and my children. I hung up and turned off my phone for the night. I needed time to think before I dealt with their inevitable barrage of calls and messages. But turning off my phone didn't stop the harassment for long. When I turned it back on the next morning, I had 17 missed calls and dozens of text messages. When I didn't respond to those, they started calling from different phones, having friends and extended family members reach out to me, and even showing up at my workplace. The desperation was almost pathetic to watch. 2 days after the inspection, I decided to block their numbers. But that just escalated things further. Hollis showed up at Lainey's school during pickup time. Thank God I had already spoken to the school administration about the situation and added Hollis to the list of people who were not allowed to pick up my children under any circumstances. The school secretary, Mrs. Patterson, called me immediately. "Ms. Mitchell, your sister is here asking to see Lainey," she said in a concerned voice. "She seems quite agitated." "Please don't let her near my daughter," I said, leaving my office at the real estate development company immediately. "I'm on my way." When I arrived at the school, I found Hollis pacing in the parking lot, her hair disheveled and her eyes red from crying. She looked like she hadn't slept in days. "Camden," she called out when she saw me. "Please, we need to talk. This is tearing the family apart." "You tore the family apart when you put your hands on my children," I replied calmly, walking past her toward the school entrance. She followed me, her voice getting more shrill. "It was one mistake. One bad moment. How can you destroy our entire family over one mistake?" I stopped and turned to face her. "Hollis, do you hear yourself? You're calling what you did a mistake, like you accidentally spilled coffee on them. You physically grabbed my sleeping children and threw them out of a room because you were upset about your boyfriend. That's not a mistake, that's assault." "I barely touched them," she protested, but even as she said it, I could see the doubt creeping into her eyes. "You grabbed my 5-year-old son hard enough to knock him to the ground." Lainey was so scared she wet herself in the car on the way home, something that hasn't happened in over 2 years. "But sure, let's call it barely touching them." Hollis's face crumpled. "Lainey wet herself?" She was terrified, Hollis. She thought she had done something wrong, something so bad that her aunt hated her. She asked me for 3 days straight if she was a bad kid. For the first time, I saw real remorse flicker across Hollis's face, but it was quickly replaced by defensiveness. I was having a breakdown. I wasn't thinking clearly. And what happens the next time you have a breakdown? What happens when your next boyfriend dumps you, or you don't get a job you want, or life doesn't go your way? Do my children have to live in fear of your emotional instability? Hollis opened her mouth to argue, but no words came out. We both knew the answer. That evening, Dad showed up at my house unannounced. I watched through the window as he sat in his truck for a full 10 minutes before finally getting out and walking to my door. His knock was hesitant, almost apologetic. "We need to talk," he said when I opened the door. "No, we don't," I replied, starting to close the door. He put his hand on the door to stop me. "Camden, please. 5 minutes." Against my better judgment, I let him in, but I didn't invite him to sit down. "Your mother is beside herself," he began. "She hasn't eaten in 2 days. She keeps saying she's lost both her daughters. She chose Hollis over Lainey and Beckett," I said flatly. "Those are the consequences of her choice." "Hollis is struggling, Camden. She's always been sensitive, and this situation with Marcus—" "Stop," I interrupted. "Stop making excuses for her. She's 28 years old, Dad. 28. When I was 28, I was married, working full-time, and pregnant with Lainey. I didn't have the luxury of throwing tantrums when life got hard." Dad's shoulders sagged. "We know we've been too easy on her. Your mother and we've talked about it. Maybe we did enable her too much." "Maybe?" I laughed bitterly. "Dad, you've been cleaning up Hollis's messes her entire life. She's never faced real consequences for anything. And when she finally did something so unforgivable that someone called her on it, you threatened me with violence rather than hold her accountable." "I didn't threaten you. You told me I might get some violence if I went near her. How is that not a threat?" He was quiet for a long moment, staring at his hands. "I was trying to protect her. She was so upset, and I was afraid of what she might do." "What she might do to who, Dad? To me? To my children? Do you hear yourself right now?" When he looked up, his eyes were watery. "I've been thinking about that night a lot. About how scared Lainey and Beckett looked. About how you looked at us. I've never seen such disappointment in your eyes." "I wasn't disappointed, Dad. I was disgusted. For 32 years, I've watched you and Mom bend over backwards to accommodate Hollis's every whim while expecting me to be the responsible one, the understanding one, the one who doesn't make waves. And when push came to shove, when my children needed protection, you chose her comfort over their safety. What can we do to fix this?" he asked, his voice breaking slightly. "You can't fix this, Dad. You can't undo what happened. You can't take back the fact that you prioritize Hollis's feelings over your grandchildren's well-being. You can't erase the fact that when my kids needed their grandfather to protect them, you chose to protect their abuser instead. Abuser? Camden, that's a strong word, is it? What would you call an adult who grabs children and forcibly removes them from a room while they're sleeping? What would you call someone who puts their hands on kids who aren't their own without permission? If a stranger had done that to Lainey and Beckett, what would you call it? Dad sat down heavily in my living room chair without being invited. We've made such a mess of everything. Yes, you have. And now you're all dealing with the consequences. The house repairs are going to bankrupt us, he said quietly. We had to take out a loan with a 20% interest rate just to fix the bathroom before it fell through to the kitchen. The garage is going to cost another $40,000 to bring up to code. I felt a flicker of something that might have been sympathy, but I pushed it down. Maybe Hollis can get a job and help with the costs. She's trying, but nobody wants to hire someone with no work history at 28. And even if she finds something, minimum wage isn't going to make much of a dent. That sounds like a Hollis problem and AU problem. You created this situation by enabling her for 3 decades. Dad looked up at me with desperate eyes. What if we made Hollis apologize? Really apologize, not just say she's sorry but actually take responsibility? Dad, Hollis grabbed my children. She physically put her hands on them in anger. And when I tried to protect them, you and Mom told me to leave her alone and threatened me with violence. An apology doesn't fix that. There's no coming back from that. So that's it? We're just done? No more family dinners, no more holidays together? Lainey and Beckett will grow up without their grandparents? The question hit me harder than I expected it to. I thought about Lainey asking why Grandma and Grandpa didn't call anymore. I thought about Beckett's confusion when I told him we wouldn't be going to their house for a while. Lainey and Beckett had grandparents who loved them, I said finally. But those grandparents chose to protect someone who hurt them instead of protecting them. So those grandparents are gone. Dad broke down then, really broke down, sobbing into his hands like a child. I'm so sorry, Camden. I'm so sorry. I've been such a failure as a father and a grandfather. I watched him cry and felt nothing. No sympathy, no urge to comfort him, no desire to make him feel better. He was crying for himself, for his lost relationship with his grandchildren, for the financial burden he was facing. He wasn't crying for Lainey and Beckett. You need to leave now, I said quietly. Camden, please, get out of my house, Dad. And don't come back unless you're invited. He left without another word, and I locked the door behind him. The next week brought a new development. My cousin Rachel called me with some interesting information. Camden, I don't know if you know this, but Hollis has been telling people a very different version of what happened that night, Rachel said without preamble. What kind of different version? According to her, you attacked her first. She's saying that you came upstairs screaming at her, and she was just trying to protect herself when she accidentally bumped into the kids. I felt my blood pressure spike. She's lying. I figured as much, which is why I'm calling. She's also saying that you called in fake violations to the city just to get revenge, and that the inspectors didn't find anything actually dangerous. Rachel, I can send you copies of the inspection report if you want. The violations were very real and very dangerous. I believe you. But she's got some people convinced, especially the ones who don't know the whole story. Uncle Mike and Aunt Janet are starting to think maybe you overreacted. This was exactly what I had been afraid of. Hollis was rewriting history, playing the victim, and turning family members against me. Thanks for letting me know, I said. I appreciate you reaching out. For what it's worth, I think you did the right thing. If someone had grabbed my kids like that, I would have done a lot worse than call a housing inspector. That conversation prompted me to do something I probably should have done from the beginning. I started documenting everything. I wrote down every detail I could remember from that night, every conversation I'd had with my parents and Hollis since then, every attempt they'd made to contact me. I saved voicemails, took screenshots of text messages from unknown numbers that I suspected were from them, and created a timeline of events. I also called Lainey and Beckett's pediatrician, Dr. Fiona Albright, and told her what had happened. She recommended a child psychologist and helped me document the emotional impact the incident had on my children. It's good that you're taking this seriously, Dr. Fiona Albright told me. A lot of parents try to minimize these kinds of incidents, thinking kids will just get over it. But trauma is trauma, regardless of who causes it. The child psychologist, Dr. Lisa Wong, was a godsend. She worked with both Lainey and Beckett individually and together, helping them process what had happened and giving them tools to cope with their anxiety and fear. Children this age don't understand complex family dynamics, Dr. Wong explained to me after their 3rd session. They just know that someone they trusted hurt them, and that the adults they looked to for protection didn't protect them. That's a fundamental betrayal of their sense of safety. Are they going to be okay? I asked, the question that had been keeping me awake at night. With proper support and therapy, absolutely. But it's important that they don't have any contact with Hollis until she's demonstrated real change and taken full responsibility for her actions. And even then, any contact should be carefully supervised. During this time, the housing situation at my parents' house continued to deteriorate. The bathroom repairs had revealed additional structural issues, and the garage conversion was proving to be even more problematic than originally thought. The electrical work was so bad that it was a genuine fire hazard, and the plumbing had been connected incorrectly, causing intermittent flooding in the basement. Hollis had been forced to move out completely while the work was being done, and my parents were living in what was essentially a construction zone. They were staying in a hotel 3 nights a week when the work was too disruptive, adding even more to their mounting expenses. The fallout was swift and brutal. Within a week, Hollis had indeed moved out of the garage, crashing on various friends' couches. Mom and Dad tried to get quotes for the repairs and quickly realized they couldn't afford to fix everything immediately. They had to take out a high-interest personal loan just to address the most critical safety issues. The home equity loan they had been pre-approved for was immediately canceled once the bank learned about the code violations. Hollis's business plan died with it, along with her dreams of becoming an online boutique entrepreneur. But the real consequences went deeper than money. My extended family began to hear whispers about what had happened. My Aunt Carol, Mom's sister, called me directly after hearing a very edited version of events from my mother. "Is it true that Hollis grabbed Lainey and Beckett?" Carol asked without preamble. I told her the whole story, and Carol was horrified. "I always knew Hollis was spoiled, but putting her hands on children? That's unacceptable." Word spread through our family network. My cousins, my grandmother, family friends who had known me since childhood, all heard various versions of the story. Most of them reached out to me directly to get the truth, and most of them were appalled by Hollis's behavior and my parents' response. My parents found themselves increasingly isolated at family gatherings. People who had previously tolerated Hollis's antics with polite smiles now openly questioned my parents' parenting choices. When Hollis showed up to my cousin's wedding and tried to make a scene about her living situation, she was quietly asked to leave. The financial strain also began to take its toll. Dad, who was nearing retirement, had to delay his plans and pick up extra shifts at his job as a maintenance supervisor. Mom, who had been working part-time as a school secretary, had to go back to full-time work. The stress of the situation caused them to argue constantly, and their marriage began to show cracks that had been hidden for years. Hollis, meanwhile, was discovering what life was like without her safety net. Couchsurfing was temporary at best, and she couldn't afford her own place without a job. She was forced to accept a position at a local coffee shop, her first real job in over 2 years. The reality of actual work, with schedules and responsibilities and bosses who didn't care about her feelings, was a harsh awakening. About 3 months after the inspection, I got a call from an unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. "Camden?" It was Hollis, her voice small and tired. "Can we talk?" "I'm listening." "I know you probably hate me right now, and I understand why. I wanted to apologize for what I did to Lainey and Beckett. I was upset about Marcus, and I took it out on them, and that was wrong." I was quiet, waiting for the but that always came with Hollis's apologies. "I don't expect you to forgive me," she continued, surprising me. "I just wanted you to know that I get it now. Living on my own, having to work, having to face consequences for my actions. I never had to do that before." "No, you didn't," I agreed. "I've been thinking about that night a lot. About how scared Lainey and Beckett looked. I remember being their age and being scared of adults who were bigger than me. I became the scary adult, and I hate that." There was genuine remorse in her voice, something I had never heard from Hollis before. "I started seeing a therapist," she said. "The coffee shop offers basic health insurance, and I found someone who works on a sliding scale. She's helping me understand why I acted the way I did, and how to handle my emotions better." "That's good, Hollis. I'm glad you're getting help. I know I can't undo what I did. And I know this whole situation is my fault. But I want you to know that I'm trying to be better." We talked for about an hour. Hollis told me about her therapy sessions, about learning to budget and manage her own life, about the reality check of having to support herself. I told her about Lainey's nightmares and Beckett's new fear of raised voices, about how I was helping them process what had happened. "Can I ask you something?" Hollis said toward the end of our conversation. "Sure." "When you called in that inspection, did you know it would destroy everything?" I thought about it carefully. I knew it would have consequences. I didn't know how severe they would be, but honestly, Hollis, I didn't care. My children's safety and well-being were more important to me than protecting the family secret that our parents enabled your bad behavior. "I understand," she said quietly. I probably would have done the same thing if someone had hurt my kids. 6 months later, I'm writing this story with a strange sense of peace. My children are doing better with therapy and time. Lainey still asks occasionally why Grandma and Grandpa don't call anymore, and I tell her that sometimes adults make choices that hurt relationships, but that it's not her fault. My parents have made it clear through various family members that they blame me entirely for their situation. They've painted themselves as victims of my vindictive behavior, claiming I overreacted to a minor incident. They refuse to acknowledge that Hollis's actions were wrong or that their response was inadequate. Hollis and I have slowly begun to rebuild some kind of relationship. She's still working at the coffee shop and living in a small apartment with a roommate. She sees her therapist twice a week and has been consistently working on her anger management and emotional regulation. She asks about Lainey and Beckett regularly, though I'm not ready for her to see them yet. The repairs to my parents' house are finally complete, though the financial damage will take years to recover from. They had to do the work in phases as they could afford it, and it was a constant source of stress and financial strain throughout the process. Hollis has started contributing a small amount each month to help pay off the loans they had to take out, which my parents have grudgingly accepted. Some family members think I went too far, that I should have found another way to handle the situation. Others think I didn't go far enough, that I should have pressed charges against Hollis for grabbing my children. But I know in my heart that I did exactly what I needed to do. My children learned that their mother will always protect them, no matter what. Hollis learned that actions have consequences, even when you're the golden child. And my parents learned that enabling toxic behavior eventually costs more than addressing it. Sometimes the right choice isn't the easy choice. Sometimes protecting the people you love means making phone calls that change everything. Sometimes being a good parent means being willing to be seen as the villain by people who prioritize dysfunction over safety. I may have lost my parents and nearly lost my sister, but I gained something much more valuable, the absolute certainty that I will always put my children first, and the knowledge that they can count on me to protect them from anyone who would hurt them, even family. That phone call may have left their day more miserable, but it made my children's future infinitely safer. And I would make that call again in a heartbeat.